My name's Luke McLean, and you're listening to Conscious Conversations. Conscious Conversations is about having deep and meaningful discussions with people who are living and leading with authenticity and purpose. And that's always been the grounding framework for this podcast. And right now I'm just feeling drawn to invest a lot more time and energy and focus into the podcast, because I think more than ever we're needing to tell stories of people who are getting off this hedonic treadmill, who are getting away from the daily grind of what we see success to being, and they're starting to find their true path, their true journey. And for many, this is a time, of transformational shift, of awakening. And if I can be a little bit of service to people through Conscious Conversations to plant seeds of awareness, but most importantly, seeds of action, then I feel like this is a really worthwhile project. So my question, is how's everyone doing today? How's everyone doing right now? And does this feel a little bit like you? Does it feel like you're needing a shift or a change? And if you're not on a path to a shift, if you're not feeling like there's monumental movements within your life, and what's happening with society right now is not waking you up, then I'm not really sure what's gonna get you out of your bubble. I really don't. But for this podcast to gain traction, guys, I'd love for you to help me out in a couple of ways. First of all, I'd love you to head to iTunes and give me a rating. Hopefully a good one, but give me a rating. The more ratings you get, the more prominent you get sort of moved around the podcast scene. There's a little bit of an algorithm to it, so ratings are really important. The second one is I now have a Conscious Conversation Instagram. It's called conscious_conversations_pod. And if you go on there, give me a follow. I'm going to put up all my previous episodes along with all my new content, some videos, some meditations, and try and make it quite transactional, and a bit of a community base through there. And the third one, guys, the most important thing you can do is share these episodes with your friends. If something within these episodes have grown you, shifted you, moved you, made you better, give it to someone else. Don't hold on to it for yourself. I do this constantly. I reckon I would give and dish out 20 odd podcasts a week to different people. I'm always doing it. I think it's so important that we share. We've got to give this knowledge to others, not just, take it in for ourselves. Okay. I also have, in my world, I have some coaching available for people. If you're wanting guidance to create shifts in your life, I'm a life coach and I'm a meditation teacher. And I do a lot of work with both one-on-one and with groups in the mindfulness coaching space. So I'm doing a lot of that at the moment, and it's been really beautiful work, especially with what's happening in life. People are seeing this as a chance to come back to themselves, to ground themselves, and to use practices like meditation, like journaling, like intention setting and manifesting as a way to bring the positive energy in. So if you like what I'm about, if you like what you're hearing in the podcast, feel free to contact me, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you. I also have an upcoming course that's big. It's part of a bigger series. So I'm calling this the Mindful Living series, and this will be my introductory course, which I'm going to call Grounded, I think. And Grounded is an introduction to meditation and mindful living, and it's really been based in really 5 simple teachings and a foundational ongoing meditation. So it's a super simple course that runs over 30 days. But the idea is not to give, the guest, not to give the person on the course 1,000 different meditations and all this stuff to read. It's really simple, but the idea is to get traction with your practice. And all I want from this course is for people to be able to walk away from it with, a foundational meditation that they can do themselves, and with some ways to live more mindfully that they're actually going to use in modern life and not forget about in 2 weeks. That's what I've really based this course on. So it's going to be really simple, but really practical. So if you're liking that, listen for more, but it'll be up on my website in around about 3 or 4 weeks. So that's it for all the intros. Now let's get into the guest. We've got Kale Brock on the show this week. Now, Kale is a filmmaker / documentary maker. He's an actor, writer, wellness expert, and he's a mad surfer, legit good. If you follow him on YouTube or on Instagram, the guy shreds. Okay, Kale has recently released his second feature film called The Longevity Film. And this film's about, the work that Dan Buetten has done on the blue zones and looking at people around the planet that are living the longest, not just the longest, but the longest and healthiest life. So people that are well into their 80s, 90s, but still in good shape. And it's an amazing film, good to watch with the kids. I really loved it. It's available on iTunes at the moment, so I highly recommend you going to get that. And on this, we talk about Kale, we talk about longevity, we talk about the importance of lifestyle wellness, not just wellness to lose weight or wellness to look good on Instagram, but a lifestyle wellness that includes things like community and mindset. And, we sort of question some of these Western beliefs and views on what wellness is and why we're getting it wrong, in our Western cultures. And that's a lot to do with probably a few key things, but mostly a lack of community, actual physical community that we're lacking. And Kale's really starting to head on his authentic path. Right as we did this episode, he has actually moved out of his house, and he's moving in to live in a van full time, where he's gonna, just hit the road. He's just on this sort of mission, it sounds like, to slow down, to surf, to simplify, and he wants to get creative again, and start to look at, planting more seeds of awareness and consciousness on himself, and look at his path forward. So without further ado, my name's Luke McLean, this is Conscious Conversations, and this is Kale Brock. I wanted to, get in firstly about yourself, mate. You're a mad surfer. You really captured and understand the importance of wellness, and not just well-being, but holistic wellness. And I'm really interested to start with growing up for you as a kid, mate. Like, what was that like, and what were the values that have allowed you to sort of move your way into this lifestyle that's become a career?
It's interesting. I think, like a lot of people, it started when I was faced with a significant health condition. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with supraventricular tachycardia, which is a technical way of saying my heart was a little bit sort of stuffed up electrically. I would surf, I would go surfing, I would play footy, and, between you and me, Victoria and South Australia born, we're talking about AFL. I would be on the field and I would have these heart palpitations, and I would get really lightheaded and my legs would feel really airy, and I couldn't really run very far or paddle very far if I was in the surf. And that was a pretty serious situation for me, because I almost sort of fainted a few times out in the ocean amongst the waves. So I went to a cardiologist, and the cardiologist said, "Hey, we'll hook you up to all these batteries and we'll see what's going on." And turned out I had this condition, supraventricular tachycardia, where my heart rate went well up into the 260s, I think, on the machine. It was very high. And they said the only option I could undertake at that point was to have an ablation. Now, an ablation is where they wanted to enter my heart via the groin or the arm and burn away the piece of the heart. They wanted to burn the sinoatrial node, the SA node, which is responsible for the electrical communication between the four chambers of the heart. And I heard that and I was like, I'm 16. I don't want to have heart surgery. And we knew someone at that time, like a sort of distant family friend, who had the procedure done numerous times and it still hadn't worked. And I thought, no way. Not going down that path. I can see very clearly what that's going to end up like, and there's no way that I'm stopping surfing. Like, that was my big why at that point. It was like, no way, I'm not spending any time out the water. I'm not getting heart surgery. I've got to find another way. So I went and met with a naturopath at that point, who was doing some lectures around Adelaide. And she was a naturopath of 20 or 30 years. And I ended up working with her for 8 or 9 years as she was my mentor. And I sat in on a lot of consults with her. But basically, within the first 30 minutes of meeting her, she sort of broke down what I was doing. I was a vegetarian at the time, but, I wasn't a healthy vegetarian. I was doing a lot of things that were suboptimal and probably contributing to my heart being so faulty, I think faulty is the right word. And she was able to break that down. So long story short, within about 6 to 18 months, I had got that condition under control, just using diet, lifestyle, a little bit of supplementation. So it had a really profound impact on me. I went, oh, okay, I get it. The body has this self-capacity to heal. You just have to give it the right raw materials. So that opened up this whole Pandora's box, and obviously landed on a few specific topics as I became a journalist and worked at Channel 10, and then sort of branched out from there and became a freelancer and a speaker and whatnot, and landed on that gut health equation and the longevity equation. But overall, if you pull everything back, it really does come down to those basics that we spoke about before, that a lot of people are finding challenging to access at the moment. Good people surrounding you, move every day, move naturally, eat great food, hopefully from organic local sources, and, have a great mindset, have a jovial, fun, cheeky, affable mindset. And generally, if you do those things, you'll live a long time and you'll live well.
It's really interesting that you say that, and really good advice. And do you think, mate, like with that, the simplicity of that, like do we, in especially in Western cultures, do we try to complicate that with everything else that we surround it with that then actually becomes detrimental to our well-being rather than instrumental?
I think so, because we naturally now, I guess not naturally, but I think we lean towards now trying to break everything down. Like it's got to be micro. Even when we did the gut movie, it was like microbiome, microscopic, And it took me doing the longevity film to zoom out and go, hey, like, what does this all mean? Like, I'm having my green smoothie in the morning, but why am I having it? Like, and how does it serve me and my goals? So I think that's what we need to do constantly. And the moment we create inflammation or stress or worry through pursuing these health goals that we think we need to, or these health interventions that we're told we need to, whether it's you're sitting alone in the corner drinking a green smoothie while your friends are at the bar having a beer, I think it becomes a detriment to our health. And, Bruce Lipton and those sort of guys who are very big on the mental emotional connection to our physiology will say that forget about recovering from serious illness, forget about attaining excellent wellness if you're stressed, if you are mentally unwell. So I think we've sort of driven this home in this sort of weird pursuit of perfection and the perfect diet, the perfect exercise regime, the perfect look. Like we've got to be totally shredded because we've got to post all these photos to Instagram. We've got to look great. It's a weird situation that we find ourselves in. And I don't know what's driving that besides the fact that we tend to have a lot of fear around health and well-being. And we're typically in the last 50 years, we've been subject to this health scare campaign, I think, that really disregards the innate capacity of the human body to not only heal itself, given the right raw materials, but also be super flexible and adaptable. You can thrive off numerous diets. This is the interesting thing. Like I felt great as a raw vegan for 6 months. At 9 months, that's when things changed and I started to get a few issues. But I felt fantastic for 6 months. I felt fantastic. Inadvertently following keto principles, inadvertently following fasting, and paleo things, and I'll point out, I felt incredible being in France, having croissants for breakfast, and a baguette for lunch, and then maybe even some more grains at dinner, some pizza at dinner, and I felt amazing. So I think what it really comes down to is you working out what are your goals. If your goals are to be super shredded, have really low body fat, and be the perfect Instagram guy or girl, then maybe a sort of ketogenic or paleo or whatever calorie counting approach is right for you if those are your goals. But if your goals are to simply enjoy life and be surrounded by great people and be wholesomely well, then I think we need to sort of zoom out a little bit and take stock of where we are at in those areas. And I think those areas include your movement. How do you move every single day? Are you moving naturally, or are you sort of pumping iron and doing curls and not really getting much out of it? Are you what's your nutrition like? Are you eating locally sourced, the slow diet, seasonal, local, organic, whole food approach? Are you doing that well? What's your community like? What are the people around you like? Because often we hear this saying that you're an average sum of the 5 people you hang out with most. And then the last thing is, what's your mindset like? Are you feeling good? Do you actually feel happy? These are things I think we all need to take stock of regularly. And I will point out that nobody does it perfectly. Like you're getting me today at, this is stressed out Kale speaking, because we're moving our entire life into a van, for Christ's sake. And we're sending all this stuff back to our parents in Adelaide, and it's chaos. We're living in an Airbnb, but we're still working, still doing surf stuff, still doing wellness stuff. This is the worst it gets for me, but I think life happens in seasons, and the ability to step back and go, hey, this too shall pass, and that, and it's okay to be out of control for a while, it's okay to be out of balance for a while, is a huge skill, because we're never going to get all these things perfect. But just knowing that, I think, enables us to pursue this idea of wellness more sustainably.
Yeah, and I completely agree, mate. And I think what you're saying is so important. And I'm interested to know, like you sort of said that their mindset sort of comes last. Do you think is mindset almost, can that be the foundation for everything else that makes better decisions, or do you think there's an order in which they go?
No, when I did when I made the longevity film, and when I visited the people who really do wellness well, it was very much sort of a big thing for me. Well, I had it inverted, I think, that list, and really focused on nutrition and movement for so long, and never really nurtured the pillars of community and mindset so much. I think they probably are in inverted back again, in the blue zones, in these very healthy cultures. They have a terrific mindset, and community is number one, really, if you think about it. But I think if we start dialing it in, if we start breaking it down and going, hey, what percentage can we attribute to community? What percentage can we attribute to mindset? Then I think we're sort of falling down, and we're sort of following that path that we've gone down before of being over analytical about health and well-being. I think we can just pull it back and go, hey, these areas are really important, and there are going to be times when my community is excellent, but my nutrition is a little bit poor. There are going to be times when my nutrition is amazing, but my community is a little bit poor. So there's going to be this sort of shift and undulation happening between those categories. And again, it just comes back to accepting that and going, hey, these are just things I need to work on every single day. How am I going to do this for the rest of my life sustainably? Because if I'm just focusing on my nutrition hardcore 100% for the next 10 years at the expense of my community and my mindset, then that's probably not sustainable. So again, it just comes back to us going, hey, how does this work for me? Where does it fit? What are my goals? How am I going to make this work?
Do you think in the places, Ikaria and Okinawa and those places, do you think that their ability to be well and to have that wellness in their life, a lot of their decision making is very simple, and where we've got so many decisions and so many things happening in our lives that we can often make poor wellness decisions because there's multiple options of food, exercise, Netflix, to do nothing. But with them, it's quite purposeful in how they live, and I'd love to pull apart that a little bit and get your thoughts.
It's interesting because I think we do suffer from an epidemic of busyness. And that's one of the real epidemics, I think, is busyness, but also you could say to an extent mixed priorities, because we think we need to earn, say, over 6 figures a year. We might sacrifice our nutrition in order to spend more time at work, or we might sacrifice our community in order to go to bed earlier, to wake up earlier, to get into work earlier. I think 100% the way that we've sort of set up this civilization in, if you will, the West, quote unquote, it's completely unsustainable, and we are dealing with the consequences of that in terms of our health and well-being, in terms of our economy being so, again, unsustainable. It's not really built on solid foundations. Just the way we live, it's crazy. Why do we work 5 days a week? Why is that normal? Why don't we spend 5 days a week on our passion projects and then 2 days a week on earning money? Or why don't we encourage more people to turn their passion projects into a business? It's a common misconception, I think, to think about Okinawa, Loma Linda, Ikaria as people who don't have much to do. They're busy, right? They're busy all day, from sunrise to sundown, but it's a very calm and considered busyness. It's quite meditative. I met one guy in Ikaria called Ilya, Ilias is a farmer, and he has an organic farm. They use biodynamic farming principles, and he's got 2 farms actually, and he sort of rotates between those 2 farms and also running his restaurant at his wife's inn. And he will pull 14, 16-hour days working, but it's not the sort of hard slog that we put ourselves through here. Like, I just find myself now like packing the van, and again, because I'm in an Airbnb, because I'm in this, situation, I'm rushing the whole day. Over in those societies, there's no rushing. It's considered, it's calm, it's patient, and they'll take 5 minutes to sit down and have a coffee. They might even take an hour to sit down and have a conversation with a friend, and whilst they're working, because no one's on the clock, everybody's just helping each other. So where does that start? I don't know whether it starts with community. I don't know whether it starts with geography. I don't know whether it starts with economy. But what I do know is that the way we've established this lifestyle, the way we've established things here in the West, in Australia, if we're going to sort of localize it to that, it's just unsustainable. And I don't think it works for the majority of the people. I mean, you see that here we have some pretty dismal health statistics. We live quite a long time comparatively, around the world. We're doing pretty well. In some parts of Sydney and the North Shore, people are living to 87 on average. It's pretty high. That's almost blue zone standards. But where we fall is in our quality of life. A lot of people will spend the last 10 plus, 10, 15, 20 years bouncing in and out of the doctor's office, trying to cover symptoms and work out how they can sort of make up for lacks in those essential areas with pharmaceuticals. And it's not quite a nice way to live. And it's very different in these cultures. You look at these old people and they're independent. They move a lot. They look after themselves. They're a big part of the community. They're revered. And they just have this outstanding quality of life. And I think that is just something we're going to keep missing out on if we keep going down the direction. Now, you're speaking with someone who doesn't have children, who doesn't have a mortgage. I just bought a van and I'm moving into a van because I couldn't even handle the typical lifestyle that's associated with, just a job and a house. Like, I mean, this is how sensitive I am. So I can't speak for everybody, but I think at some point we need to take back control of how we spend our time. And again, it's all a choice. And it's
mate,
go ahead.
Yeah. And, I've got 5 kids, so I can be on the other end of that, Kale.
For sure.
Look at it, mate. But even we're selling, our house to reduce our mortgage to virtually nothing, to live on a farm so we can live, again, with less worry about work and worry about debt and worry about that lifestyle to keep up, and live a lot more natural, a lot more connected, and raise our children that way. Because probably guiding similar principles to yourself is that modern lifestyle, that chase, just isn't right. And I just don't think it's the way forward for us. And you can see that with, what's happened with COVID around the world, that our wellness is in such a state that if we had been, I feel, in better shape, naturally, we could deal with these things a lot better. And I think moving forward, we need to be in better health and not so reliant on pharmaceuticals and, life aid to get us through to that 87 mark.
Yeah, and it's idealistic, and there's going to be a huge part of the population who are just not interested in that sort of approach. And I, to an extent, I love the idea of settling down and buying some property, and I'm sure that will become a more attractive idea as I grow older and start a family and all that sort of stuff. But right now, I'm just thinking, most of my days thinking about chasing great surf and creating great stories. The growing my own food and stuff is something I'm willing to sacrifice now in order to pursue those or chase those other pursuits. Now, I mitigate that decision, I think, by making some picking up some shortfalls, by going to the organic market and buying direct from the farmers and all that sort of stuff, and ensuring that I catch up with great people as often as possible and surround myself with good people. So again, it's not going to work for everyone. If everyone moved to the farms, and what would happen to the cities? it's a balance. And
Yeah.
I think we need to find that in our own life. If you ask the average person, hey, are you living a balanced lifestyle? Most people would say, no, I'm too busy, you know? So that's the sad thing. I think that's the thing we need to reverse.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was trying to get at is removing the dependency on financials to serve a lifestyle that I gather people feel stuck in regardless of country or city, but they've got some financial freedom to live how they want.
For sure. And how do you teach that? How do you encourage everybody to do that? I was lucky. I was influenced pretty early. I worked 2 years full-time for Network 10, and I was like, no way. I'm out of here, and I'm never working full-time for someone else again. Now, I'd probably pull full-time hours now, but that's at my own discretion, and I'll shift my workday around my surfing. You know, if I'll shift my workday around the tides, around the winds, and all that sort of stuff. So I can only speak for myself, but that's worked out very well for me. It doesn't mean I have this blissful, worryless experience of life. I still struggle with certain things, and I still get frustrated in certain circumstances. But overall, my trajectory, I think, is very positive. A lot more positive, I think, me personally, I think, than someone who's working sort of out of alignment with who they truly are and their values.
And do you think that's a general, for most young people, you know, without kids and without a mortgage, is that starting to become a more popular lifestyle shift and belief?
I think the ideology is, but the practical and tangible elements of that ideology, not so much, because the landscape is shifting so quickly. I mean, you think about TikTok, for instance, and the rise of TikTok. And I'm not on TikTok, but people became famous quickly, and they became rich. Like people were signing huge endorsement deals, and then that could essentially be ripped away very soon. I don't know if you would call that, like, you know, whatever your opinion is of TikTok. That's just one example of how fast the landscape is changing. And I think if we encourage young people to pursue the endeavors that make them happy and excited, then that blanket rule will sort of guide them, I think, in a better direction. And I think Alan Watts has some beautiful philosophical sort of soliloquies on this, where he talks about, don't pursue money, pursue your art, or pursue your thing. I think we sort of need to land in the middle, as with everything, because we need to feel secure and financially safe and all this sort of stuff. How do you do that? There's a myriad of ways that we can make money now. I mean, look at me. I transitioned from doing all this health and wellness stuff essentially into being a surfer over the past 6 to 8 months, because I just felt like it was my time is sort of finished as a health and well-being, I don't know, speaker, pioneer. Geez, no, absolutely not. I don't know what the word is I was looking for, but an ambassador of some sort. And I think it's possible for everyone. It really is possible for everyone. And if you want it bad enough and it becomes a priority in your life, then it'll happen. So Alan Watts has some great soliloquies on this, and you know, there's beautiful YouTube videos on this, and he talks about pursuing your art as opposed to, or pursuing your one thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be art. Instead of pursuing money as a first priority. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, with a grain of salt. Obviously, we need to be financially secure and looked after. And I'm invested in this because I have nephews, you know, who are very young. I have a younger sister who's going through high school now, and I don't want her or my nephews to feel like they should work a job that they don't like, that doesn't align with who they are, in order to pay for things that they don't really need, just because everybody else does it. I think we need to establish new norms in this sense, and that'll take time. Every shift takes time. I mean, look at me. I was really quite heavy into health and well-being. I was obviously had built a bit of a career there, and I was following a career path, but eventually just sort of, for want of a better phrase, almost burnt out in that space through self-funding 2 feature-length documentaries. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. In order to research health and well-being and longevity, I probably sacrificed my own health and well-being and longevity. So yeah, just transitioning now into being a surfer, essentially, and being on YouTube and all these different things that I'm now currently doing. So it's definitely possible for everyone. We just need to want it and be hungry for it.
Do you think, Kale, like, is there, I know it's cliche, but is there a need for people, because we get so conditioned to believe certain things in the old norm that we need to sort of create the mental space to get back to our values and be clear about those values, but not just as conceptual values, but transition them into behaviors and action, and also around purpose. Like, is that the starting point for people to become clearer on how they want to spend that time?
Yeah, it's massive. When I was 18, I went walkabout. I have, my dad's side of the family, we have indigenous lineage, and my mum's side is very European. And I think there's different elements that sort of express themselves throughout my life. But one of them from my dad's side was going walkabout when I was 18. I felt like I really needed to go and be alone, even though I wouldn't advocate that as being such a healthy pursuit now, but I needed to go. And I lived in a van, so it's sort of gone full circle.
Yeah.
But I lived in an old Toyota Hiace for 6 or 9 months, whatever it was, and drove around Australia on my own, just surfing, spending a lot of time reading and journaling and doing all this stuff. And that trip for me was such a guiding force, such an awakening, and provided so much clarity as to who I wanted to be surrounded by, and what I wanted to do. I really drove in those, particularly from a storytelling standpoint. It became such a big pillar and source of light in my life that I don't know what I would be doing if I didn't go on that trip. So I think that's a big part of what we're missing, is this time that we don't get anymore. I didn't do that trip with social media. We had Facebook, but we checked it once a month kind of thing. We ended up living in Byron. I met a friend. I had a friend fly over and hang out with me. And it was just such a beautiful time. And we don't get that anymore. Any little space, any little window of time is filled up with us scrolling on our phone or checking emails or doing all these different things. And I think that is conducive to, I guess, filling up the brain with this busyness, with this need for busyness. And if we're going to allow some retrospection and some introspection, which I think is necessary in order to work out who you are and where you want to be and what you want to do and how you want to contribute to the world, then yeah, we need to do something. And I don't know how to do it. The only thing I know what to do is delete my social media apps and create strict, stringent rules around phone use. And I don't follow them all the time. Like at the moment, it's shocking. It's kind of like, just do what I can.
Well, especially if you're on YouTube, with your surfing and stuff. So some of, you've got that, and that's with phones and devices. I feel like that's the great problem. Like if you're a heroin addict, people know you're a heroin addict because you're shooting up and it's not socially accepted, but your phone's a blend of work and life for a lot of people. So if you're on the phone at 11 at night, it's kind of okay. And if you're up 6 a.m, it's kind of okay. And I feel like that's sometimes the biggest problem with device use is there's no clear boundaries on it.
100%. And I've, toyed with different ideas on this and toyed with having certain days of the week where I use the phone and all this sort of stuff. But, living away from my family and living away from all that, it all does blend. And, having a very social media based job is it does get confusing. But I think, again, it just comes to being a little bit tough on yourself and creating these stringent procedures, even though I'm not one for that generally, to get by, because without that, we lose our productivity, we lose our direction quite easily.
Yeah. I do a lot of work, Carl, with people and trying to create space. And I liken it to football or to surfing, where it's like, the one thing the coach will always say in football is don't give the opposition time and space, because when they get time and space, they're going to perform. They can do stuff. It's no different to us. If we give ourselves some time and some space, we can actually perform. But without that time and space, and if everything's constant, it's hard to actually perform at your best because you're just reacting. And you're under pressure.
100%. Yep. And when do we give ourselves time and space now? Besides that 20 minutes in the morning to meditate so that we can continue doing the unsustainable lifestyle that got us to the place where we needed to meditate anyway. It's such a weird sort of thing. Yeah. When's the last time you went on a 5-day camping trip with no devices at all? I know I haven't done it in a long time. it's not really normal anymore. And this is, again, a big part of our recent move into the van. It's to rekindle that explorative and slow and disconnected lifestyle for a while, disconnected electronically and hopefully very connected humanistically. It's an interesting one, and it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle in my own life, especially with the direction that I've gone, and I'm still working on it.
Can we talk about the van, and can we talk about that that move from filmmaking, but also now doing a lot more in the surfing? I saw you did some surf retreats, and that being a real passion of yours. Is this sort of the next sort of phase for you to sort of move into that area?
Surfing, has always been, since the age of 10, and will always be one of the top priorities. It's just only in the last 6 to 9 months become a part of my vocation. Storytelling is always sort of king for me, and I've been working on a lot of stuff, but most of it fiction now, because that's always been a sort of North Star for me, is to move into fiction and share movies and either film them or be in front of camera or whatever. That's sort of my goal, and everything that I've done has always been sort of a step towards that, whilst trying to sort of contribute and make the world a better place. So this next move is to free up that mental capacity, free up those PowerPoints to actually contribute them towards those goals, to sit back and write and formulate ideas and craft them and get them on paper so that I can pursue those endeavors, because I think previously I probably wasn't financially secure enough to do so. And now, just with YouTube doing what it does and sort of earning a lot of that passive revenue, it's definitely helped me get to a space where I can take a few weeks off and not really be impacted too much. And, doing surf retreats and stuff, it's great, but it's definitely not going to be a career choice of mine. It's just sort of an intermediary step, I think. The last one I did was actually such a beautiful weekend. And again, it all came back to community. I had this group of guys, if we're going to talk sort of boy talk now, I had this group of guys and we had this like incredible weekend. The boys were having beers at night. I don't drink beer, but the boys were having beers at night. I was having a red wine or two. We had surfing YouTube clips going the entire weekend, and it was just great, So I think it's a good intermediary step for me to move forward and be liberated time and space wise, but it won't form a part of my career, I don't think, moving forward. At least it's not a top priority for me, but surfing always will be.
Yeah, okay. And how much clarity do you have on your forward view? Like, how clear and precise do you try to make that? And how much do you leave space to be guided by whatever shows up?
It's an interesting one. I've always got stuff on the burner. I'm not going to lie. I've got 10 movie ideas, and half finished, half started scripts hanging around on my desktop and all sorts of stuff. So I think a lot of it is putting some prongs in the fire and seeing which one comes alight, seeing which one heats up. And I've had some good conversations recently on some of those projects, but again, you kind of have to sit back and just see which one gets legs. There is an element of following the path of least resistance. But I think, to an extent, you do have to drive a lot of these ideas, because no one, in most circumstances, no one's just going to sort of come along and go, hey, I didn't realize you're great. Here, come along. I'll provide you with a career. You really do have to work at it. And I'm okay with that. And I think trusting in the quality of your work as opposed to trusting in the universe has always been a lot more reassuring for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And how do you find that balance for you? Because you're so interconnected and with work and life, what does that balance look like for you, where you need the surf just for the surf, but not to perhaps film or do a retreat that's just you time? And how do you find that balance?
I find that balance by surfing every day, mostly, and 95 to 98% of my surfs are not filmed and not recorded and not for work. So that's just happens naturally. I don't think I could do it if I was, some of the guys who vlog every day and stuff. I just can't do it. It robs that pure joy that I get from surfing. And when I say pure joy, it's not like I'm riding a Malibu and nose riding to the beach. Like you get, as I get way more joy from like attacking waves to pieces. And it's strange, but it's one of the best feelings in the world when you come in, you've had the best session ever, and you've landed that air you've been trying, you've landed that maneuver. It is the best feeling ever, and that's why it's become a priority. And I don't want to salt that feeling and take away the quality of it just in the pursuit of putting out more videos and getting more views. I could do it. POV surfing, for instance, is a huge sort of topic now in surfing, but I can't bring myself to record all my surfs. And it'll probably change when we have more time in the van. And Emma might want some hours working behind the camera, but we'll see. I'm not going to push it too hard.
Yeah, okay. Mate, who's sort of inspiring you at the moment? What are you reading, and where are you getting sort of that from, or what are you preparing to sort of get your inspiration from when you get in the van, and have you got a bit of a plan for that?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of stories that I want to tell in the van. I feel inspired a lot every day through just being in nature, through experiencing the things that I naturally experience. I'll often be driving or having a shower and I'll think of an idea, and that's how I feel inspired. I feel inspired by watching great movies or watching great TV. What have I felt really inspired by recently? Peaky Blinders. A fantastic show on Netflix. I watch that and I go, wow, I'd love to tell a story like that. And there are numerous examples of those sources of inspiration. But then I look at people who are just being themselves, and you being unapologetically themselves. Even people who I disagree with, being unapologetically themselves, I think are a source of inspiration. So, I don't know, some of those people. One of those people actually who I've been really appreciating lately and just feel like is a force for good is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., who's obviously been doing a lot of work in what used to be, I think, a potentially controversial space, but is now bringing a lot of information to light that has previously been taboo. So I just love what he's doing. And then in the film space, it's mostly guys like Guy Ritchie and Damien Chazelle who inspire me.
And do you just hold the tension between them, mate, in sort of that non-fiction, fiction, and sort of give yourself a bit of both?
Yeah, but I think the elements of what inspires me stays the same. Yep. Each time, and that's a brilliantly told story. It can be just a movie trailer that gives me tingles or something, and I go, wow, that's so good. But that could be for a doco, it could be for an animation, it could be for whatever. So yeah, I just think just being open to that and not going, hey, what's my framework for inspiration? I'm going to chase that. And just being open, I think, is a really good place to be. It probably goes back to your last question too, and having that open mind and being, I guess, the underside of the umbrella to try and at least catch everything before you either pass it aside or take hold of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Mate, the longevity film's out.
Yeah, it's out. It's out all over the place, I think.
I watched it the other week. Now,
you
sort of said, I loved it. I've, Dan Buetten, I've listened to a lot of podcasts from him and love the work that he's done on the Blue Zones.
Cool.
And really loved, your capture of it. I thought it was great. And I wanted to get into a little bit about your filmmaking or your documentary making process on that in terms of, how does that start for you? Like, what's the idea that comes to you? And then what's the process that you go through to get that from an idea to action to this is now going to happen?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's huge. It's like doing a van. You start it off and you think it's going to be this quite tight project. You can see the start, you can see the end, and then it just explodes into this moving, multifaceted art piece that just sucks the life out of you in both a good way and a bad way. I think, for the first one, the Gut movie, it was just an extension of what the work I was already doing. I was interviewing a lot of incredible practitioners and professors and scientists and doctors on gut health, and I thought, there's a movie here. There's a movie that I think only I can tell and I want to go and do it. So it was just reaching out to certain people who could help me go to Africa and live with the Sun tribe for a week. And then it was raising money. We did an online event to raise money. Again, both these films have been self-funded, so it's not like we received any cash for them. And then it's coming back and sorting your footage and sculpting it into a film. And I think the longevity film was the same, except it was just zooming out on gut health. I knew that there were people around the world who were incredibly healthy, but they weren't necessarily drinking kombucha or taking probiotics, So it was just zooming out and going, hey, what am I pursuing worthy endeavors in this health space? And am I focusing on the right things? Because ultimately, I think we all want just a happy, healthy life. And if we're going to look at who's doing that well, I think the blue zones are a great place to start. So looking at those people was quite significant. It still has a big impact on me today, and I think has driven this whole situation that I'm in now.
Do you think that the Blue Zone, the longevity film, do you think that it did? I know you were in the microbiome area a lot longer, so it was easier. But have you learnt or grown more from this particular film than the other one?
Yeah, I think so, because to an extent, when I did the gut movie, I learned so much that I realized that there was so much more to know, and I didn't know that much at all. So the more I learned, the more I realized how little I knew and how much more there was to know. Professor Tom Barodi, who pioneered fecal microbiota transplantations, and he had some interesting comments on coronavirus the other day. I had a chat with him and I said, how much do we know about the microbiome? He said, less than 1%. There is so much more we need to know. And so I felt like I had done the work that I could on that topic, and I wanted to sort of branch out into something else. And that in itself was quite impactful and significant in my life, and letting that go, letting the gut health sort of story go, and ignoring people's questions about gut health now, and that sort of stuff. Then the longevity film, I think, you could compare them and say that was more impactful because it's now sort of reshaped the career trajectory that I'm currently on, and it sort of forced me to reevaluate whether sacrificing my own health and well-being was worth trying to help everyone else's health and well-being. And I said, no, it's not. So I've sort of pulled back from that, and there are still some health stories that I want to tell, but there's a lot of other fictional stories that I want to tell in between. And I think the longevity film really helped me realize that my time is finite, and if I want to do those things, I've got to turn them, instead of them being pipe dreams, I've actually got to turn them into some tangible strategies and pathways to make it a reality.
Yeah, and I got that same feeling when I was watching the I sort of watched it, and I'm like, and I felt like there was an element of me that said, like, just simplify, really simplify about what you want to do. But with the simplicity comes the clarity to really live the way you want to live. Like, and what we sort of discussed earlier in the podcast is do what's right for you, like in your process. And that's sort of what I took when I watched the movie, is let's just live more authentically to me. And that's sort of where my trajectory's gone after watching that film, is to really try to put those steps in place, because there are steps that you need to then take to do that. It just doesn't happen because modern life isn't set up like the Nicoya people, are they?
No, you've got to put in the work, and
Yep.
the mistake is thinking that the work gets you somewhere where you arrive and then you're there. The real situation is the work is the point. The work is the point of the whole thing. And when you realize that these moments aren't to be skimmed over, even though sometimes we wish we could. They are to be soaked up and considered and made part of this whole journey, because there's no end point. There's no end game. This is it. So yeah, that was one thing that really came out of the longevity film, is that the day-to-day experiences, they're as meaningful as the end destination.
Which is a little bit like a true reflection of wellness. Whenever you hear anyone talk about wellness, is there is no end point. It's with you for every day of your life until you finish. You don't get it, and then all of a sudden you don't have to worry about it. And I think that was a similar thing with the longevity. Is it's a way of life.
100%. It's a lifestyle.
Mate, before you go, wanted to just catch up and just talk to you, finally on wellness, right at the moment in Australia and the importance of well-being. And, if you could give, anyone, especially who's in a lockdown or struggling a little bit, like what are your 3 to 5 main tips that you'd give to someone to try to implement or do that might just help them get along a little bit long at the moment?
Yeah, it's tricky. When we were in lockdown here in Sydney, I was still able to surf every day. So if that's possible, if it's possible for you to get outdoors every single day and soak up nature as much as possible, then do that. And I think we should be complaining a lot more. And I don't say that lightly, because I don't think, complaining or being angry are particularly healthy traits, but I think we do need to stand up for our rights as humans and work out what this situation means to us and to the wider society in general. But from a practical standpoint, how are you moving? Again, those 4 main pillars. How are you moving? What are you eating? Who are you surrounded with? Who are you surrounded by? And what's your mindset at the moment? So, considering those 4 facets of your well-being, I think every single day, and working out how you can add points into those elements, is going to steer you in the right direction.
And you think, mate, obviously some people in Melbourne don't have any community or can't contact physically anyone, but that quality of food, natural movement, and mindsets, the idea to do that meditation and to journal and set that intention, those 3 you've got control of regardless.
Yeah, and nurture some excitement for the future and some excitement for what's happening right now as well. Even though this situation sucks and is negative in a lot of ways, there's also some really big conversations happening. There's some big shifts happening in the global sphere of awareness, I think. So there are some positives too, and how we frame our situation will determine how we feel about it. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks for coming on the show, mate. I really appreciated the insights. Good
Thanks
luck in the
for having
van
me.
and keep surfing.
Thanks, brother. No worries on that front.